So today let's take a look at the Jewish people. And are they truly the biblical, historical Israelites? I was listening to a video of this gentleman here, and you can hear the hypocrisy of the Jewish people, and also a case of mistaken identity or even identity theft, which has caused a lot of confusion and destruction in this world. I'm going to react along the way, so let's take a look at what this Jewish man has to say.
Good evening. Welcome to Michael Savage's Corner here. I want to take on a very powerful topic, which is Zionism, what it is and what it isn't. I have faced this hatred for many years when I was a student at University of California at Berkeley for my doctorate, and I was already in my 30s. Already we saw the Arabs and the left marching together against Zionism, which was really a desire to eliminate the Jewish state. And I argued with them to no avail. Now it has metastasized to the point where the American right and the American left have something in common, which is their new hatred for Jews. They don't call it that. They say, well, we can criticize Israel without hating Jews. No, that's not what they're doing. It's become very fashionable on the right to hate Israel and hate Jews. And I can understand with Epstein and those names, it's very easy. It's coming up again, bubbling up from the surface. But before you confuse yourself with words such as genocide, which most of you don't even know what the hell it means, and look only at what's going on in Israel and Gaza without looking at what's going on in Africa with your friends from the Islamic world, killing Christians by the thousands for many years now, slaughtering whole communities of black Christians without not one word on the campuses. Now, this is not justifying. I want you to hear me out. My entire lecture today, or sermon, or discourse, really. The discourse is the proper word, before you judge any further.
So right off the bat, and this is what they always do, they have to tell you first how he experienced how the Jewish people are always hated. Well, he's not the only one who is hated. Me, for example, I am hated even in my own nations, right? And also he's talking about Africa. Guys, my channel is not about the mess in Africa, what we caused by this false gospel, but also the fact that you don't like what Israel is doing doesn't make it that you now support Hamas. I don't support Hamas at all. In fact, I don't like neither of these groups because I'm concerned about the Western European nations. So let's take a look at his claims and just refute it biblically.
Before you judge any further, back off and learn to listen and think before you respond. I'm open to the suggestions and listening to you. So let's start at the beginning. What is Zionism and what is it not? Why is this sudden love for Arabs? Where did this come from? This love for Hamas, love for Arabs amongst the American right. People who were Trump supporters and are Trump supporters and call themselves American patriots have no problem with hating Israel and hating Jews, masked as being anti-Zionist when they don't even know what Zionism is. They have no idea what Zionism is, but they hate it.
First of all, he says, I don't understand where this sudden love for the Arabs come from. But this is mostly on the left. I don't agree with that as well, because I don't like thousands upon thousands of Arab flags in England, for example. These people have no idea, but they turn against you because what they see in the media or what the state of Israel is doing to the surrounding Arab nations. That's why they are upset. But this is not what the video is about. This video is about the Jewish presence in ancient Judah. But are these people true Israel?
So let's try to discern with some reality what this really is. There's been a Jewish presence in Israel for 3,500 years. Read your Bible, particularly you right-wing Christians who love to call yourself Christians. Read your own Bible.
Well, I read my Bible and studied the Bible, and I came indeed to the conclusion that there has been a Jewish presence in Judah, later called the region of Judea by the Romans. In that time, everybody who lived in the state of Judea called themselves Judeans. But does that mean that all the Judeans were Israelites? No, they were not all of Israel. Because the Bible tells us that there were also Edomites and Canaanites, all sorts of people living in Judea. But that does not mean that they were all Israelites. So where did the other peoples come from? When did they enter the kingdom of Judah? Because the kingdom of Judah was for the Israelites. So where did the Edomites come from? Where did the Canaanites come from? The Bible tells us that after the 12 tribes of Israel entered into the land of Canaan, all the tribes formed the kingdom of Israel, but they got into an argument. Now the kingdom was divided into the northern house of Israel and the southern house of Judah. So the northern house of Israel started to worship false gods. They went into idolatry. They were sinning against their father. Therefore, God divorced them. And God caused the Assyrians to deport them, to take them away out of that land of Canaan into the northern regions of Assyria. But the southern house of Judah was not much better. Most of the Israelite people also were deported from the southern house of Judah. The only place where the Israelites basically still were worshipping God was Jerusalem. But after Babylon took over the world, I'm talking about the biblical world, not the world as we understand it today, because the king of Babylon was the ruler of the world, therefore also ruled over the southern house of Judah. They took the Israelites from Jerusalem into Babylon because King Hezekiah was rebellious against the Babylonian king. So what happened to that region, the southern kingdom of Judah? Was it empty for 70 years? No, of course not. It became a province of Babylon. And it didn't stay empty. Other people moved in these regions of the southern house of Judah. So who were these people who entered the kingdom of Judah? Because Judah was called after the Israelite patriarch Judah. Therefore it was called the kingdom of Judah. So there lived Judahites. But the Judahites were all gone. So who were these people moving in? Well, a large group, probably the largest group who moved in, were the Edomites. So who were these Edomite people? The Bible tells us that the blessings and the promises were made to Abraham and his promised seed. And that promise went from Abraham to Isaac. And from Isaac the promise continued through Jacob. But Jacob had a brother called Esau. And naturally, as the oldest son, he would inherit the land, the birthright, and the dominion mandate. But Esau did not care about building God's kingdom on earth. He didn't care about righteousness. He didn't care about the land. Esau just wanted wealth. So the Bible tells us that Esau married Canaanite women. And because Esau was cut off from the birthright. And Esau has been angry with Jacob ever since. Nevertheless, Esau went south and he called that place Edom. Edom was named after Esau's children, the Edomites, a mix of Hebrew people and Canaanite people. The Bible even tells us that Esau also married daughters of Ishmael. So now you had a whole group of people, Ishmaelites, Canaanites, Hebrews, who started to mix. But also Ishmael was not the seed of promise, and the covenant was neither made with Esau, neither with Ishmael. The promise went to Jacob. But Jacob was divorced. Jacob, Israel. Right? And Esau loved it. Esau, his children, Edomites, loved the fact that they were deported and that he even took the Israelites into Babylon. Remember, Lord, what the Edomites did on the day that Jerusalem fell. Tear it down, they cried. Tear it down to its foundations. So after all the children of Jacob were taken out of the land of Canaan, the Israelites, they were all gone. The Edomites moved more northwardly into the region of the southern kingdom of Judah, later called Idumea. But also the rest of the old land of Israel was taken over by totally different people, even before Babylon. And the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon and from Cutha and from Ava and from Hamath and from Sepharvaim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel, and they possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof. So most of the children of Israel became known as the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And where they went, if you look at the rest of my channel, you'll understand that they became the nations in Europe that was promised to Abraham. But that small group, that few thousand Israelites who were in Babylon, they multiplied there. But after the Persians took over, the king of Persia allowed them to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple. But by the time the Israelites came back to Judah, most of Judah was already inhabited by other people. And it was especially the Edomites who controlled everything. And of course, because Judah was part of the Babylonian Empire, also Babylonian gods and Babylonian philosophy was roaming in the kingdom of Judah. Hence that their book is still called the Babylonian Talmud, because they based their ideas on ancient Babylon, carried into the future by the Edomites. So in the 3rd century before Christ, the Israelites tried to unify the whole region by forcing the Edomites to accept the Hebrew laws. They wanted the Edomites to get circumcised and started to do the temple worship. They basically tried to unify everyone under this Hebraic religion. So after the Persian Empire, the Greeks took over the region and later the Romans. And in the time of the Romans, they called the kingdom of Judah Judea. It was a Roman province, but the Romans still allowed the people there to worship at the temple. But it was the Edomites who, through political influence and money, gained places in high positions. The Israelites established a group called the Pharisees. This group was established to protect the Hebraic laws. But it didn't take long before also the Edomites infiltrated within the Pharisaical school. And not only that, Judea even got a king, an Edomite king, King Herod. And these Pharisees and the king corrupted Israel. Israel was no longer truly Hebraic. They even started to add Babylonian philosophy on top of the law of Moses, what we now call the Babylonian Talmud. These are oral traditions, additions, and to the philosophy of Babylon added upon the Torah. So when the 3 men from the east came to Judea, and he went to the Edomite king Herod, they told him there is a baby born, and he will be the true king of Israel. That's why Herod did what he did to all the babies, because he didn't like the fact that the true king of the true Israel was born, because his Edomite kingship would be in danger. And then after 30 years, after Jesus grew up, Jesus went to the Jordan River, got baptized, and the Holy Spirit descended on him as a dove. And he went into the world preaching the kingdom. But who was the kingdom for? Well, Jesus told the Pharisees, these Edomites, that where he goes, they cannot come. Right? He also says, there are many here who are not of my sheep. He was talking to the Pharisees, and the ones who were not of his sheep, they tried to take him down. They hated him for these reasons. And Jesus said, you don't believe me because you are not of my sheep. He didn't say you are not my sheep because you don't believe me. No, it's the other way around. You don't believe me because you are not of my sheep. My sheep hear my voice and they follow me. And many of the others initially followed Jesus, but after a while, after they heard him speak, they left. Jesus said, let them go, because they were never of us. So there were many people living in Judea who were not Israelites, and therefore they were not of his sheep, right? So the real Israelites, they followed Jesus, right? And in 70 AD the temple was destroyed, and the true Judeans, the true Israelites, they were regathered, right? According to prophecy, the two sticks would become one with their brothers who were already in Europe. Because Paul went to Europe and he told them that their fathers came under the cloud. They came out of Egypt. Paul told the Greeks that they are the descendants of the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And that's exactly what Jesus said. Jesus said, I did not come but for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So what about these Edomites and these Babylonians, all these other people? Well, they kept calling themselves Judeans because they lived in that region. Later they started to call themselves Jews. But these Jews are not the Israelites, because Jesus already brought them into the new covenant. And these Edomites have nothing. That's why they're still waiting for their Messiah. But they are not the true Hebrew Israelites. Therefore, they used to live in that land, but that land was never really of them to begin with. They just lived there temporarily, like they always have done. Jesus even traced them back to their father Cain, who was a liar and a murderer from the beginning. And Cain would be a vagabond in the earth. And these people have always been vagabonds in the earth. So if the Jews want to make claim to any ancient land that ever truly belonged to them, they should go back to Edom. So where is modern day Edom? Well, we can see here on the map that's Jordan. So if the Jews really want their true ancestral land back, they should go to Jordan.
There's been a Jewish presence in Israel for 3,500 years. Read your Bible, particularly you right-wing Christians who love to call yourself Christians. Read your own Bible. Your Bible derives from the Jewish people. Judaism gave birth to Christianity, which gave birth to Islam. Make no mistake about it. It is the mother of all monotheistic religions, or the father of all monotheistic religions.
No, Jews or Judaism is not the father of Christianity. Again, Judah was called after Judahites. Judah was a son of Jacob. But they were not of Jacob. They were not Judahites. They created a new Babylonian religion that only smelled like Hebrewism. But a true Hebrew faith was never called Judaism. Judaism is a new religion that was formed to the Babylonian Edomites.
Jewish presence in the so-called Palestine. You can call it Palestine if you wish. We could talk about that at another time. 3,500 years at least.
Yes, indeed, there was a Jewish presence. But these are not Israelites. The Israelites already entered the new covenant. They already fulfilled the promises to Abraham, that from Abraham would come a nation and a multitude of nations. All these nations would be under Christ, and kings will come out of Abraham's loins. Where are all the Jewish kings? Where are all the Jewish nations? Where is the multitude of godly nations? The Jews never had any nations. They had indeed a presence. But also 3,500 years of presence is not entirely true, because after the temple was destroyed, most Jews scattered through the Roman Empire. They had no place to go, so they followed us. They went after our land. They went into our lands, right? North Africa was still part of the Roman Empire. They went all through North Africa. Some stayed behind in the Middle East. Some went into Saudi Arabia, but also many went north, right? The Byzantine Empire, Italy, and into Spain in that time. And later also into the rest of Europe. So who exactly went back to that land of Canaan? Was it the true Israelites? No, they never went back, because God gave them a new tongue and new land. So who were the people who returned to that land and rebuilt it? What did Malachi prophesy about that? The burden of the word of the Lord to Israel by Malachi. I have loved you, said the Lord. Yet ye say, wherein hast thou loved us? Was not Esau Jacob's brother? Said the Lord. Yet I loved Jacob, and I hated Esau, and laid his mountains and his heritage waste for the dragons of the wilderness. Whereas Edom said, we are impoverished, but we will return and build the desolate places.
I keep hearing from illiterate morons that they hate Zionists, not Jews, or they hate Zionism. They don't even know what the word means. There really are basically old school country bigots disguising themselves as intellectuals who hate Zionists but not Jews. So what is Zionism and what is it not? What is it? It's a belief that the Jewish people, like all peoples on the earth, have the right to self-determination.
So he says Zionism is just the fact that the Jewish people have the right to their own land and their own determination. Sounds reasonable. But here is a man, a Jewish man, in America, and the Jews are also in Europe, and they don't grant the European people their own land and their own self-determination. In fact, it is Jewish organizations who want mass immigration, who open the doors for Islam to come in, who tell the European people, this is not just your land, we are here just as much as you are. We have a right to your land. But at the same time, they claim that they have the right to their own determination. While this man is in America, speaks our English language and benefits of our system. Why is he not in Israel? I mean, they have the land there now. What's he doing in America? While he doesn't like other people occupying his land, he is occupying our land. I hope you can see the hypocrisy, because Jews have never respected the fact that Europe was our land. It was in fact that he even caused the French Revolution to force us to accept them as equal citizens. And they have been influencing our society ever since, just like they did in ancient Judea, where they started to influence the true Israelites in that region. And we all know that God destroyed that place, that became wicked. And now they are doing the same thing. So my point is, if they believe that they have the right to their own land and their own determination, why do Jews organize themselves against the European people and force us to open the doors for other peoples and other religions to come in?
We in America like to think that we have a right to self-determination, and we have a right to our borders, language, and culture, of which I have been a chief proponent for 30 years now, if not longer. We have a right to a homeland. Our homeland? Is it our homeland? What about the Native Americans who are pushed off the land, slaughtered, decimated, their land stolen from them, smallpox put in the blankets of some of the tribes, the death marches of the Native Americans? So don't get so self-righteous with me about what a great American you are. Why don't you give up your property to a Native American and shut your pie hole?
Here we go, the Indian argument, right? Guys, they believe they are God's chosen people. Therefore, they have the right to do whatever they are doing to the Palestinians. But oh, what the Europeans did to the Indians. If America is so incredibly evil, what are you even doing here? He's here, he went here to university, he's making money here, he's making a YouTube channel here, and at the same time he calls us evil. And what about the right to your own land and self-determination and to be safe in your own land? That only goes for the people in Israel. What about the European people? I'm not even talking about just America. What about Europe? Did the European people steal that land from Indians as well? No, but the same agenda is being rolled out in Europe. The European people have nothing to say because the Jewish organizations who push these agendas make Europeans at this moment unsafe in their own lands because of the Jewish programming of mass immigrations, and now European children are being murdered on a regular basis.
One of them is Barbara Spector, a former American who made Aliyah and then 10 years ago, with the help of the government of Sweden, set up a non-denominational institute of Jewish learning with the Greek name of Paideia here in Stockholm. She believes the current wave of anti-Semitism in Sweden will pass and that Jews have an important role to play in a country undergoing profound change.
I think there's a resurgence of anti-Semitism because at this point in time, Europe has not yet learned how to be multicultural. And I think we're going to be part of the throes of that transformation, which must take place. Europe is not going to be the monolithic societies that they once were in the last century. Jews are going to be at the center of that. It's a huge transformation for Europe to make. They are now going into a multicultural mode, and Jews will be resented because of our leading role. But without that leading role and without that transformation, Europe will not survive.
So according to prophecy, the two houses would be regathered. They would be blessed. They would enter the new covenant, and spiritually speaking, they would enter the kingdom of God. Right? If the Jewish people are these chosen people, why do they need American tax dollars to even survive? Also, European tax money, billions of dollars, go there every year. Why is that? Why are they not a nation under God? But they don't want to ask themselves these questions. They just say, we have the right to be there because we used to have a presence there.
I've said that on the campus of Berkeley 30 years ago. Why don't you give up your house in the hills of Berkeley to the Miwok Indians, you lying bastard, you? I did. I've argued with them. Suddenly the left went silent. They shut their goddamn mouths. The inheritance cases were the most vehement anti-Jewish, anti-Zionist people on earth. Many of whom were Jewish themselves. Give up your land. Give it back to the Indians. Zionism, dirty word now. It asserts that the Jewish people are not only joined together by a religious identity, but a people with a cultural, historic, and spiritual tie to the land of Israel. And they had a right to build a sovereign state there, a right recognized for all peoples under international law.
A right for all peoples under international law, except the European people. They have to keep their mouths shut and let the Jewish people organize Europe and turn us into a multicultural melting pot with a multitude of gods and cultures and races, right? No, that international law apparently only applies to the modern day Israel.
For thousands of years, the hope of a return to Zion has been central to Jewish prayer, ritual, and identity. Jews, at the end of every Passover, would say, L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. Or they pray for a new light to shine on Zion. And what they were expressing was a yearning for a homeland. You say, well, great, we believe in that, but why at the cost of the Arabs? Didn't they steal the land from the Arabs? No, actually they didn't. And if you want to talk about stealing the land from people, all of you self-righteous leftists and now you neo-rightists, why don't you look at what happened when the state of Israel was created in the Arab crescent in North Africa, Morocco, Algeria, Tangiers, Libya. There was a Jewish communities existed in those countries for 500 years or more, some 1,000 years. And they were deeply embedded and ingrained in the nations I've just mentioned. Upon the creation of the state of Israel, the Jews were kicked out of all of these nations, Libya, Morocco, Algeria, Tangiers, etc., and all of their property was stolen by the people that you now think are the oppressed. But you don't know any of that history. You don't know about the Jews being kicked out of northern African lands, do you? Because the Gulf states are very clever. They have focused the small minds of the left and now of the right only on what happened in Israel upon its creation. You can read it for yourself. Zionism is a Jewish nationalist movement which believes in the creation and the support of a Jewish national state in Palestine, which is the ancient homeland of the Jews. It is the national liberation movement of the Jewish people, which brought about the establishment of the state of Israel, and views a Jewish, Zionist, democratic, and secure state of Israel to be the expression of the common responsibility of the Jewish people. And yet it's turned into something very different, hasn't it? We hear about Free Palestine. What does Free Palestine mean? It means kick the Jews out of Israel. It means from the river to the sea, the elimination of Israel and the displacement of its Jewish population. That's what Free Palestine means. Now, when Ariel Sharon withdrew from the Gaza Strip, I was on the radio in 2005. I said it would lead to a disaster, and it was the greatest mistake Ariel Sharon had ever done. They actually kicked the Jews out of Gaza. The Jewish state kicked the Jews out of Gaza and made them disinter their dead relatives out of the ground, out of graveyards, and removed them from Gaza and leave no graveyards of Jewish people in Gaza. And they thought that the Palestinians would build the foundations of a peaceful state. But they didn't. They took the greenhouses that were left behind by the Jews who were raising roses and other flowers and fruits for Europe, and they turned them into launching pads for rockets onto the state of Israel.
Yes, we all know that the Jews were always kicked out everywhere. Not just North Africa, also in Europe and other places, for a reason. Because you invite yourself in other people's lands. And sometimes people don't like people coming in uninvited. But now you're here and now you're turning against the land you entered, where you made all your money, right? And the whole sad, sobbing story about the Middle East, guys, you have been fighting each other even thousands of years ago. And the Ishmaelites and the Edomites even worked together against the true Israel. And they still do it. Because on the highest level, Arabs and Jews work together. Even Islamic countries like Turkey is being controlled by Jews now for hundreds of years, right? Whatever happens there, we tried to help, but you guys cannot work it out together. But why do you need us? Why do you hate us so much? Why do you call us colonializer? Why do you keep begging us for money? If you are so fantastic, solve it yourself, right? But at the same time, you force Europeans to accept everybody and all other religions while you plead that you have the right to your own country, to your own borders, to your own religion, right? But not us, right? So they are benefiting from us, and at the same time they try to destroy us. Guys, it is the same time as in Judea when the Edomites took control over the Israelites. And it was not a good place. There was a good reason that Jesus came on the scene, and 70 years later the whole place was destroyed.
And now we have brigades of Nazis in America marching to the tune of anti-Zionism when it's really anti-Jewish. They hate Jews. And don't tell me that's just criticizing a little bit about Israel. No, it isn't. You hate Jews and you know it. In your heart of hearts, most of you who espouse anti-Zionism come from families of Jew haters. You always have and you always will be. There's always been a Jew hatred in America. There are Jews who I hate. I ran away from them in New York.
Many people in Europe, also European people in America, start to realize that they are losing their land. But this Jewish man, all I hear is him talking about the right of the Jews to have a home country, the right, they have all the rights. But if you listen to him, he has zero respect for the European nations. In fact, they never respected the European nations and the European people. They never respected the fact that it was our land for thousands of years. They always gave themselves the right to move in uninvited. And they come with all kinds of liberal agendas, whether it is mass immigration, the woke agenda, the LGBTQ, all these left Marxist liberal doctrines come from them. That was not so before. But they have no concept of the fact that we also have a land. They think they have the right to trample upon our Jesus and our culture. And at the same time, they are using us to create their own safe, sovereign land. So I'm gonna leave it here because he keeps on sobbing about the sad people over there, right? Why do we have to hear these stories every day? We have our own problems. We are perishing ourselves. And if you want to do whatever you want to do it over there, right? But you are here in the West, so start to show some respect for the West. And start some respect for our God and our Christ, right? I'm going to leave it here today, guys. Many people like to donate to Israel. If you want to support me a little bit, you can do that as well. There is a link in the description box. I'm going to leave it here today. I cannot listen to this man any longer, but I hope you see the hypocrisy, guys. And they are doing everything they can to call us names, to refer us to things that happened in the past. They're intimidating. They are even assassinating people. Guys, we are not going to let them intimidate us, right? God is still with us, but we have to return to the truth. We have to remember who we are, because for now we are only concerned, and we are even supporting and funding Edom returning to the land of Canaan. And in the meanwhile, we forgot that we are the true Israel of God ourselves. God bless you.